let me shift here, and I just want to talk a little bit about silence. Silence, my sisters and brothers, has many dimensions. There is a sacred silence, which is that silence out of which creative contemplation grows. It's a meditation on the word and the will of God. It's the silence out of which we meditate and get closer to God. It's the silence in which fervent prayer is born. There is a sacred silence. But then there's a seething silence that comes when you are quiet externally, but you've got a storm going on the inside. The late Dr. Howard Thurman called that a noisy quietness. But then finally, and here's the silence I want to get to, there is a sinful silence. And Adam's silence falls into this category because a sinful silence is a silence that comes over you when you ought to say something, but you don't say nothing at all. It is that silence that creeps in when you ought to speak up for God, but you sit there acting like you don't know what God said. My sisters and brothers, I fear that Adam was not only silent on that fateful day in the garden when a serpent showed up, but Adam has remained silent through the centuries. When Africans were captured and taken from their homeland, packed in the hulls of ships, sold on auction blocks, beat and killed and misused and kept in shadow slavery, Adam was silent. When Jews were persecuted, deported, and murdered by Nazis, Adam was silent. When Native Americans were slaughtered in the acts of genocide so their land could be taken from them, Adam was silent. When our ancestors were lynched and called boy and girl, even though they were full grown, when they were denied employment and equal access to resources, Adam was silent. And today, far too often, when our boys are shooting and killing each other on the streets, and our girls suffer from low self-esteem and give birth to children whose daddies won't stay around to take care of them, Adam is still silent. Sisters and brothers, there is a sinful silence among us when injustice is raging and we remain quiet. When people are aching, when people are hurting, when babies are crying and dying of hunger and not having enough love from insufficient care, and we remain silent, that is a sinful silence. When the church looks and sees what's going on in its communities, and not just in its communities, but what's going on right there in the household of faith, and we sit there and act like we don't know what's going on, that is a sinful silence. And let me suggest that there's a time when silence is sinful. And here in the text, we see a snake talking to Adam's wife. Adam remains silent. Adam should have said something. My sisters and brothers, the nation is waiting for somebody to say something. Go on, touch your neighbor and tell him you ought to say something. You see them boys on the corner, you ought to say something. You see what's happening with those sisters. I'm not talking about Pookie and Ray Ray and them. I'm talking about the saints' children. Y'all ain't gonna help me in here today. You ought to say something. The classroom is waiting for somebody to say something. Youth violence is waiting for somebody to say something. Every community, every city, every town, every home, every boy, every girl, every family is waiting for the church to break the silence. And if we don't break the silence, let me tell you what's going to happen. If we don't break the silence, we end up embracing the appeals of the serpent. What are the appeals of the serpent? Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. To go back to Lodabar. Your work's not done just because you made it to the palace. Oh, bless the name of the Lord. But you've got a responsibility to help somebody else make it across. Thank you, Jesus. Don't pull up the ladder because you climbed to the top. Don't blow up the bridge because you made your way across. Thank you, Jesus. But reach your hand back down the ladder and pull somebody else up out of Lodabar. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Tell themselves it's all right if you got it now, just hold it for me. I'll be there to get it after a while. Oh, bless the name of the Lord. Thank you, Jesus. You got to make up in your mind that what God has for me, it is for me. I might not have it right now, may not get it next week, you might try to stop me from getting it, but if God said it's mine, I want you to know after a while, I'm going to get what belongs to me. Sometimes God got to strip what you got so you don't depend on yourself. He got to take away from you so you understand how to depend on El Shaddai. Come on in here. Thank you, Jesus. Our young people are dying. Crackdown. Suicide. Homicide. They'll kill you at the drop of a dime. Our jails are full. Yet the crime still runs rampant. Sometimes God got to strip what you got.
90.7 WTCC. Good morning and welcome to the Spoken Word. I'm your host, Bishop Talbert Swan II. And as usual, we'll be telling it like it is through cultural idioms and nuances that shape the order, ethos, and chaos of the African American experience. Words have their own vitality. They shape their own consciousness and create their own context for interpreting social and spiritual reality. The spoken word contains the power to reshape the landscape of society. Let me get my time check right. It is 6 minutes past the hour of 9 a.m. And I want to thank Mr. Kenneth Barnett for bringing us up into the 9 o'clock hour with The Promise. You can hear The Promise every Monday morning from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. A good way to start out your Monday morning, a great way to start out your week. And let's get ready. Let's get ready for a power-packed week of, who knows, miracles, empowerment, whatever the case may be. Prepare for it this week, and definitely have a terrific week. Have a terrific week on this week. Listen, I've got to talk about this. There were certain experiences that we had here locally last week when we had our municipal elections, and it just reminded me of the rampant anti-blackness that still exists among so-called communities of color. And see, oftentimes when we think of anti-blackness, we think it can only occur among white people. But the mastery of white supremacy is to be able to get non-white people to participate in perpetuating, spreading, and upholding white supremacy. And I know that sounds kind of strange to some of y'all, but it's a reality. You don't have to be white to perpetuate white supremacy. That's the reality. And we're going to talk about that today. I'm going to talk about that here in the Pioneer Valley. Welcome to everybody who's listening over 90.7 FM throughout Massachusetts, Connecticut, Vermont, and everywhere in the Pioneer Valley. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Tell a friend, tell somebody. The Bishop is on the air right now. Welcome to everybody over the World Wide Web on all of our social media platforms, except Instagram. I still can't go live on Instagram because I had the audacity to highlight the fact that white folks have used affluenza, a bad day, and a number of frivolous excuses as justification for them killing people. And all I did was state facts that are backed up by a simple Google search. You can find the articles, and they said it was hate speech, and I haven't been able to go live on Instagram ever since. So I guess if you expose white supremacy, it's hate speech. So welcome to Twitch, welcome to Twitter, welcome to Facebook, welcome to YouTube, and everyone else who is out there. Do me a favor, rep your city, rep your town. Let me know where you're chiming in from. Give a brother a shout out. Good morning to my daughter Whitney and my grandbabies in Chi-Town. I see you, Jules Howard. I see you, Kay Murray. I hope you were able to listen yesterday. My friend, longtime friend, the Reverend Rodney Mayfield is tuned in the building. Kathy Swanson, good morning. Clifford Payne, Michael Moore, all of y'all. All right, rep your city, rep your town. Let me know where you're chiming in from. All right, listen, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come right back, get in on our conversation, anti-blackness among people of color, communities of color, whatever you want to call it. Welcome to those that are in the Twitter space. And, of course, if you want to speak in the Twitter space, you will just put that request in, and we'll get some of you up. The rest of you, 413-337-1867, 413-337-1867. Stay with us. Don't y'all go nowhere.
for all the brothers that passed, but more particularly one because it affected me drastically. I remember my sister gave me the call and I was in awe. Matter of fact, it felt the farthest from reality. She seen somebody post RIP with his name, and I said I doubt it's the same friend I had since the 7th grade. She said I'ma call his sister and double check, and called me back, said he hanged himself in his room and had been there for days. Initially it didn't hit me, then it clicked, and I remembered that I hadn't seen or heard from the homie all week. Wish she had told me what had him feeling lonely and weak. I guess everybody got demons we don't even speak of, cause I was with him exactly a week before the call. Just under 20, he couldn't even purchase alcohol. My best friend for like 6 or 7 years. I'm not ashamed to say I shedded plenty tears, but it was hard. He was somebody I had plenty memories with. The first person I ever burned any trees with. The worst feeling is knowing that you would leave us in all this grievance without a reason. You're not the first people to ever believe in me. When it came down to it, you knew you could call me if you needed me. Cause that information I wouldn't have ever imagined. It's sad thinking about it. I ain't happy that it happened, but it made me. There was plenty times when I thought that it would drive me crazy. But looking back on it now, I see all the drive that it gave me. I learned more about why I am who I am on the daily. I know it may sound crazy, but I'm glad that it made me. Yeah, was born the son of a pastor, he was who I was named after. Matter of fact, I even got some of his characteristics. Both of us got messages for the people. I just do mine with rhythm on beat, he do his on the pulpit with scriptures. Well connected, respected in the community. Ever since I was little, I felt like there was some pressure on me. It started off with little stuff like when my folk brought us to church, and then they forced us to get up and say a testimony. Getting older, had to watch how I acted in public, cause people wouldn't hesitate to put that in discussion. Chatting like, is it that the pastor's kid? I'm like, yeah, that's me, but please don't expect me to be exactly like my daddy. Don't discredit my family for how I am. I'm not a little kid no more, I'm now a man. And I ain't pointing fingers, I'm not trying to do no blaming at all. When it comes to how I came up, I wouldn't change it at all, because it made me. There was plenty times when I thought that it would drive me crazy. But looking back on it now, I see all the drive that it gave me. I learned more about why I am who I am on the daily. I know it may sound crazy, but I'm glad that it made me. Yeah, glad that it made me. Yeah, glad that it made me. Looking back on it now, I see all the drive that it gave me. So glad that it made me.
90.7. That's T Swan. That's my son. Y'all need to go check out his music. I keep telling y'all he's got some new stuff out, and you definitely want to check it out. It's fire. So get on that. Get on that. Get on that. Get on that. He's having a listening party coming up soon here in the field. So check out his page, T Swan Music. T Swan Music. There's a listening party for his latest EP is called Black Swan. Black Swan. Okay, so you definitely let me see. I might as well go ahead and look up the information. If somebody else has got it, please put it in the chat section. But I'm going to look it up because I want y'all that are in this area to go check it out. Okay, go check it out. It's available on every platform, wherever you stream music, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, here it is. Listening party. Listening. I hope I didn't miss it. Nope, November 14th. The entry is free. It's at the Hub, 1341 Main Street in Springfield, November 14th. Listening party for his new EP entitled Black Swan. So y'all need to go and y'all need to check that out, okay? All right, do that. 413. Thank you. I see my wife in the comments now. She's throwing the date up there. 413-337-18 is the number here. If you want to chime in on the conversation, I want to get right into it. Let me say again, as I stated in my preliminary conversation, that anti-blackness is not just a problem among white people. It is a problem even among black people. We have black people across the diaspora, black people from the Caribbean, from Africa, and other places, that when they get here to America, they have a level of disdain and disrespect for black Americans. And as I stated before, and I know white folks have a problem with me saying this, all of that anti-blackness is spurred by white supremacy. That the catalyst for it is in this white supremacist society is white supremacy. Here's the deal: when those from other cultures get here and they hear white folks continue with the narrative of, well, how come Africans can come over here and succeed, and how come Caribbeans can come and succeed, and Indians can come and succeed, and Asians come and succeed, but you black folks can't, which is, first of all, a lie. But they hear that rhetoric and they buy into the, oh yeah, American blacks are lazy. They're shiftless. They make excuses. They want entitlements and handouts, etc., etc. And then you hear people who look like us saying, I'm not black. Well, what the hell are you? You know, they want to deny blackness. And then we have our brothers and sisters that are Asian and Latino and Indian, who also buy into this negativity. And there's a level of anti-blackness in other communities of color that are subject to oppression and discrimination and mistreatment based on the fact that they're non-white. And you would think that those who would be the greatest allies, that would band together to fight against the oppressive white supremacist system, you would think that that they would come together and collaborate and not buy into it. But the divide and conquer motif has been highly successful. I mean, that's the reality of it. Non-black communities of color in this country have been silently complicit in the oppression of black communities. And I know I'm going to ruffle some feathers with my conversation today, and that's okay, because that's what I do. You know, I'm good with that. You know, I have no problem being controversial. You know, that's kind of my stick, because the truth is controversial, and I'm going to speak truth. And I am not using a broad brush, because oftentimes when you talk about this, people accuse you of using a broad brush. It's not a broad brush. No one is saying all Asians or all Indians or all Latinos or all anybody. And instead of harping on whether or not we mean all, you all need to have a real conversation about the anti-blackness that you know exists in your community. That's what's so disingenuous about it. You know there's anti-blackness in your community, but you will attack me for saying it as opposed to attacking it in your community. I put a Facebook post up last week after municipal elections here that highlighted the fact that you had leaders in the Latino community. And in no way, shape, or form did I ever say all the Latinos in the Latino community. And people know that. They attacked me for having the audacity to talk about it rather than attacking the anti-blackness that they knew was going on in their community. So they were passing out a slate promulgated by a prominent Latino leader of probably the most prominent Latino agency in the city, and some others who were passing out a slate that was a completely anti-black slate that told people in the Latino community in the at-large city council election, vote for a conservative, anti-black, anti-Latino white man, as opposed to voting for black incumbents who have been on the forefront of fighting against police misconduct, racism, and anti-black bigotry in our community. But vote for this white guy because the white power structure wants him, and don't vote for the black people. This is what they were passing out. Now, y'all get mad at me all you want for talking about it. What you ought to be upset about is the fact that it was being passed out in the first place. And you ought to be going after the folks that were passing it out and spreading that divisive anti-blackness in your community, as opposed to trying to shut me down for being bold enough to speak about it. Because other people are talking about it. They just may not be talking about it publicly like I am. You know, but you all know I'm not going to shy away from it. And so, you know, I had some scathing attacks. People were literally cussing me out and all kinds of stuff. Never saying anything about those who promulgated the slate, but just about the black man who had the nerve to talk about it. Because how dare you talk about what's happening in the Latino community? I live in this city. I was born in this city. Okay? I'm going to talk about whatever the hamburger I want to talk about that happens in this city. And I don't care what community it happens in. Yeah, I'm going to talk about it. And so not only did they put out a slate to vote against the black incumbents on the city council, on the school committee at-large election, there were only 3 candidates. 2 incumbent black women. One is a black woman who's half black and half Puerto Rican. So she's half Latino. And 1 white woman. And on their slate, they said, vote for the white woman. The Trump-loving, anti-black, anti-Latino, anti-civil rights, anti-progress white woman who didn't even know what the school to prison pipeline was, who didn't even know what the racial makeup of the school district was, who didn't even know that the majority of people in the school district are Latino and African American and not white. But leaders in the Latino community said, don't vote for either of the 2 black women. Don't vote for the half black, half Latino woman. Don't vote for the other black woman. Vote for the conservative white woman that the white power structure wants to get in. This is what was being passed out in the community. And instead of getting mad at the fact and publicly calling out the people who were divisive enough to pass it out, they came to attack me for having the audacity to say something about it. They started calling around and calling other black people like, hey, what the heck is Bishop Swan doing? You know, they didn't want to call me cowards. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Bishop Swan. First and foremost, my prayer with you and your family. First and foremost, her name is Miss Hernandez. She told you to shut the F up, right? And that was one of the most disrespectful things that I saw But what we are recognizing in America is that it is okay to disparage heterosexual black men. It's okay to tell you to shut the F up. A man of God. But the Bible tells us, touch not thy anointing. They're going to reap the their story. But I just wanted to get to this. I support you, sir, and everything you're doing now. The people in the North End, the Latino community, Maria Legas, Terry Rodriguez, Herbie Flores, Adam Gomez, and then don't have any power, sir. And this is backed up by a contingency of black people who have black hate. We have people that divided the city of Springfield between two camps. And I'm just going to be bold enough to say it. Ray Jordan and Herbie Flores came up with the conclusion that the North End was for the Puerto Ricans and up on the hill was going to be by the blacks. There was a black woman, sir, who was going to run in Ward 1. She went to Ray Jordan. I'm not going to reveal her now, but she went to Ray Jordan for help. And he told her not to run in Ward 1 because that was for the Puerto Rican community. These are the facts on the ground. Now, the city is divided like that, and Maria Legas, Adam Gomez has got sanctioned by the North End to run. And he's a good person. I've been working with him on stuff for the more, but he doesn't have any power. Anything that is done in the North End goes to Miss Shirley Coakley, Florida and them, and they've never had any love for the African community. However, I'm in good relationships with them because we talk about the self-hate in our community. Like, for instance, Bishop, here we have a mayor that has been disrespectful to the black community. But yet and still, the black community, led by Ray Jordan, just had a fundraiser. They just all sat in the room, Bishop, having a fundraiser for this mayor who supports Curly running for office. He supports the white supremacist, the police commissioner, and yet we have black people in this community who are in our sorority, in our fraternity, in our churches, in our social clubs, having meetings with white supremacists at the detriment of the black community. So the Latino community has been exploiting all of the gains that you have made, sir, and all the work that you have done, but we must deal with the mote in our eye. And the beam in our eye is black inferiority. We have people in positions, and I'm going to say their names. We have people like Marlo Brown. We have people like Marcus Williams. We have people like Bud Williams. We have people like Ray Jordan, and all of them, sir, Betty, all of them, sir, are spiritual and mental cowards because they don't stand up for this community. And this community has been exploited because we have powers and principalities in high places and black faces that are having, listen, Helen Clarkson House is a wonderful woman. But if you consider around this mayor, there have been under Dominic Sarno's watch, Bishop, these are facts, 40 unsolved homicides of black and Puerto Rican people, right? 40, check. And the district attorney hasn't even updated the list yet. Since Dominic Sarno has been in office, 40 unsolved homicides. And here's the key, Bishop. 20 or more of them, people who are listening to this show, I know the parents, the mothers, the fathers of young people who have gotten murdered in this street. 20 of them in the last year. And do you know that this mayor, this police commissioner, this district attorney, they have said nothing on these 40 unsolved homicides. But yet and still, we sit with the mayor, we sit with these white people in these rooms, and then we don't criticize our listen, let he who is out sin cast the first stone.
I agree, brother. We've got to hold each other. We've got to hold each other accountable
on our behalf. So as we criticize the Latino community because they're exploiting all the gains that we have made, there has been a signed check from those people who are in our community who have been in political positions for the last 40 years, sir.
brother,
who are the key instruments for things not happening in the black community.
Brother, we have to hold each other accountable. I feel your passion. I hear what you are saying, and your boldness for speaking out about what's happening in our community. And I appreciate your support. You unpacked a lot, and we're gonna let some other folks chime in and talk about it.
Okay, before I hang up, I just want a conclusion because a lot of people hear me talk. Now, I want to say anything that I have said today, sir, that is a lie, then speak about it. What they can't say about me, sir, is I'm lying. Before I conclude, me, Reverend Lewis, and Gary Porter, 25 years ago, sat in Ray Jordan's house, and we were trying to bring Romney back. And we were talking about political things, and Mr. Jordan told me, Reverend David Lewis, and others that he doesn't have to do a damn thing we say. If we want what they got, we have to take it. Now, if I'm lying, as Reverend Lewis, he works at the African Diaspora Mental Health Association, they can say a lot of things about me, Bishop. But one thing they can't say is I'm lying. And if they want to have a debate on this, I'm willing to bring the facts to the table because this is what it's going to take. I love you, Bishop. Thank you for this opportunity. And you have a wonderful day. And you keep fighting. We don't need no cowards. These dudes is cowards. You're not a coward, sir.
All right.
All right. Love you, man.
Thank you, sir. 413-337-1867. I know some of you were calling during that call, so you were trying to get in on the conversation. So the phone lines are open. 413-337-1867. The caller said a lot. So I'm sure there are a lot of you who may want to chime in on what he said. Good morning, caller. You're on the air. Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
I'm good.
Good. First and foremost, I want to say I'm absolutely thrilled that I haven't had the opportunity to have this conversation because in the same way that the brother was speaking about the political intrigue and lack of accountability with respect to the power structures that where he is, I'm in Louisville, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not from here.
Okay.
I was raised in Houston, Texas, and in Los Angeles. And something that's very, very interesting about the question necessarily of anti-blackness with respect to different generations, different manifestations of what truths come out in our lives. What I begin to notice is that I'm 33 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a new city for me, and I'm also living I love happy hip hop. I love to dance, and I look like a fool to people, generally speaking. With a smile on my face, and I'm also not from here, high top, and people look at me like I'm crazy. I'm just happy. I love seeing my people out opening businesses while there's a protest going on for Beyond Taylor, while they're showing up daily showing up as an authentic selves, the best of our ability to even attempt that. Given what is the realities of this country, what they call us, what that actually means, which is fundamentally alive. I listen to my brothers, commonly speak to each other affectionately, but using a particular verb, I just really in my heart of hearts, this we feel. I see my sisters going around, challenging each other to, greater, the greater and greater economic heights because, it's hard to be black and not necessarily understand what, not necessarily what poverty is, but things cost. And things cost exorbitant amounts. Things are being hard for silly reasons. But people like the idea of getting rich. Say the word out of God is going to get rich. With the wealth that we have as opposed to the wealth that we have people, the wealth that we have spiritual community. Like time is back to our ancestors as well. No. There ain't no love in the city is what the hook on the rent concept. So I fundamentally think it's different. It was weird for me to be from a completely different state, move here, have 20 friends show up as my first time living in a new city, a new state, living about Breonna Taylor, showing up down at 6 and Jefferson, and finding out what my city was like. And it made me think about, that movie, what was it, The Green Book? I'm like, okay, that was a cheap Hollywood overture, although it was an opportunity to tell our story. And I had to live that way. I had to be embraced by the community here and be guided while the police were chasing me, while the city was having to reveal the fact that redlining, gerrymandering, and criminal capitalism via the mayor's office, trying to gentrify the West End. buying up houses for like $1 because the people who are living in there, they can't afford to keep the maintenance. So the city wants to buy a house for $1. What do? They send it to a banking institution who wants to bring in a different demographic of people, that wants to throw the paint on it, throw some wood, charge it for exorbitant amounts, and now we have gentrification. They know what they're doing, and they've seen it.
Yeah, they know it.
And Hulu has been fighting this fight for a long time, right? It's at the same time. My dad's 80 years old. I'm adopted. I was adopted a little later. I'm 33. My dad is 80 years old. He is old enough to remember the conversation about Louisville because Cassius Clay became the great and infamous Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
There's people here that still speak his name disrespectfully.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is that people think this stuff is ancient, and we've got people that are living right now who have literally lived through what we consider to be history. I'm going to thank you for your call, 413-337-1867. So much that caller brought up gentrification, a number of other things. Listen, we've got to understand the reality is that white supremacy has allies among non-white people. We talk about Derek Chauvin, the cop that knelt on George Floyd's neck, but among the 4 police officers charged for the death of George Floyd, remember now, you had Lou Teo, who was an Asian American officer who had a history of complaints made against him by black people. This isn't something that's new. We see it all of the time. When Akai Gurley was killed, some of you all will remember that many of the Chinese Americans marched, but they didn't march for Akai Gurley. They marched to forgive the Chinese police officer who shot him. All of that is going on in America. Anti-blackness among so many. I'll get to you, caller, 413-337-1867. And at the same time, standing behind Black Lives Matter has been a hesitation by many in communities of color. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning and God bless. Didn't this city just hold a festival of the Harambe and Stone Soul? And secondly, sir, Raymond Jordan has been retired for 43 years. And it's strange that people keep throwing his name around as if he's the god of elections. It's any man's game. And I'm concerned that Mr. Stokes didn't return to the ballot of Springfield, sir, to help rectify all the problems and the racism that he keeps screaming about. Because I didn't see any of that.
Is this a personal conflict you have with him? You're gonna have to take that up with him. 413-337-1867. It's a reality, and see, these communities have to come to grips with it and talk about it and deal with it and not lash out against black people for having the nerve to speak about it. The reality is the black experience in America is laden with oppression and systemic injustice. And while other non-black people of color continue to have their own challenges, we will never fully understand the fear, anger that they have toward our community, who are not responsible for any of the oppression of their community. What Asian Americans and Haitians and Jamaicans and Latinos need to realize is that our oppression is bound up and intertwined with the oppression of black people across the diaspora. And until we're free, none of us are free. And trying to jockey for proximity to whiteness is not going to advance your community. There were so many who when Trayvon Martin was killed, they wanted to highlight George Zimmerman is not white. He's not. No, he's a Latino. George Zimmerman is the son of an Afro-Peruvian mother and a white father. And the bottom line is, like I said, there are times when non-white people participate in perpetuating white supremacy. You remember it was Geronimo Yanez, a Latino police officer, that fatally shot and killed Philando Castile. Okay, during a traffic stop. When he said he had a gun and had a license to carry it. So, you know, it exists among our own people, and many times they bend over backwards to try to prove that they can be just as anti-black as their white peers and counterparts. And that's a problem. Let me bring up in the Twitter space. Let me bring LaRon up. LaRon Barton. You can now speak, LaRon. You're up in the Twitter space. Let's see if LaRon is paying attention. Okay. Well, let me bring Constantine up. Twitter space. You're up, Constantine.
Hey, Bishop. I just wanted to say I love your show and I love what you stand for. God bless you and your family. I'm calling from Toronto, Canada. So, I mean, we hear a lot of the stuff that goes on in the States. And, we're not completely, in the dark about it. And it's just really, it's sad. It's really sad to see. I mean, we live in the most multicultural city in the world, Toronto here. So,
yeah.
Much love from all of us up here and to you and yours.
All right. Appreciate you. Thank you so much.
God bless you.
You as well. All right. Let's see. LaRon. See if we can get you back in here. LaRon, you're in the Twitter space.
All right, thank you very much for the time, man. I love this conversation. This is one of my favorite shows or programs that I like to get up and listen to in the morning.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
There is a lot of there's a lot of anti-blackness in a lot. I mean, look, anti-blackness is everywhere. It's within the air that we breathe, right? But for some reason, all these other non-white, non-black groups, they love to come together and say, "Yo, let's fight racism. Let's fight white supremacy." But when you, as a black man, or when I, as a black man, point out, well, you know what? Yeah, let's do that. However, we need to also point out the anti-blackness in your communities.
Yeah.
They were looked at as being very divisive.
Exactly.
If we look at the anti-Asian attacks. There's been obviously within the Asian community, there's always been anti-blackness there because let's just keep it funky.
Mm-hmm.
They have a proximity to whiteness that no one will ever have, right? Mm-hmm. And like many groups, they're told to stay away from black people when they come over here. Because look, white supremacy in America, whites are on top, blacks are on the bottom. And so they jockey for their position, man. I mean, as a black person, I don't use the word PLC. I don't use the word BIPOC.
Right.
I don't even say black and brown anymore because the fact of the matter is that Black people advocate for so many people, but we don't get that same type of love back.
Yes, we do not get the same energy. We're always talking about black and brown and black and Latino and black and Asian. We're always attaching others to the struggle, and then they do not come back and reciprocate that.
You know what's funny? Like, and so I remember I read a Twitter I read like a Twitter conversation from this sister. She was specifically she mentioned an example of anti-blackness in the school system, which to the person that didn't know what the school to prison pipeline is, shame on you, especially if you are a politician. You need to read a book.
She was running for office for the school committee.
That's ridiculous. I mean, listen, I did a talk for the South Carolina PTA where I broke. This woman talks about a black student experiencing anti-blackness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then for some reason she started going on to the POC, to the black and brown, and I'm like, hold up, stop.
Mm-hmm.
If this is like, for some, like, it's not only with the other groups, Bishop, but it's internally with us. It's almost like we're afraid to just strictly say black, as if we're not going to get the same love, so we have to include other people.
But you know that's true, because I mean the whole, Black Lives Matter pops up, and then of course the counter to that is All Lives Matter. Nobody was saying All Lives Matter before we said Black Lives Matter. And it's like, and also this society has basically told us that the only way we will advance a cause that will positively affect black people is if you attach other people to it. And so, when they came up with affirmative action and those things, they say, yeah, we want to level the playing field for black people, but we also want to include white women and gays and this and that, and it's always this rising tide lifts all boats kind of philosophy when it comes to black people, and we can never get anything specifically for us. They can get an anti-Asian Pacific Islander hate crime bill. Other communities can get things specifically for them, but whenever it comes to black people, we've always got to attach someone else to it. And so we begin to parrot that same narrative that we feel like we can't advocate for ourselves. Everybody else can advocate specifically for their community. We're the only people who feel like we can't just advocate for black people.
Well, Bishop, like, for some reason, like, and listen, I'm not trying to speak ill of him. I think Martin Luther King, he's obviously a giant within our community, right? But I do feel like that a lot of that comes from that civil rights Martin Luther King lineage, where it's like MLK worked with all types of people. But when you look at someone like Malcolm X, who specifically advocated for black people, that's wrong for some reason. Like,
I also think that they have bastardized, sanitized, and domesticized MLK because MLK. When you go back and look at some of his other speeches, there's one where he specifically is talking about reparations for black people. And when we're coming to get our check. And he broke down how they got created land grant colleges and all kinds of things to advance the cause of immigrant white folks, and have never done that for black people. And so what they've done by sanitizing MLK is they've made white folks feel comfortable quoting MLK and using him as a cudgel against black people. So whenever we speak against white supremacy or try to advance our cause, they pull MLK out there behind on the 17-minute speech that they know one line of, and try to use him against us.
It's the same quote.
Yeah. Always. Content of your character, not the color of your skin, over and over and over again.
You know what, Bishop? Like, next month, I'm sorry, in January, like, black folks are going to see that posted on white people's feeds, whatever, over and over and over because of MLK Day. But and I'm gonna jump off. I just want people to know this, especially for black folks. It's okay to just advocate for black issues. That doesn't mean that you hate anyone and anyone else. It's okay to call out anti-blackness in other communities. Listen, my lady is my lady's Latino and Asian, and I still talk about this. So don't be afraid to stand on your square. Like, it's okay. You know what I mean? It's okay. No one's gonna come get you. So, Bishop, thank you so much.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much. I gotta bring up my fraternity brother, social advocate, activist, giant in the community and beyond. I got to bring him up before I get to your calls. I got to bring up the Bishop, Dwayne Royster. Bishop, you're in the Twitter space.
And to speak for minutes on it. I just had to say this is a very pertinent topic, and I'm glad you're bringing this up. Back in September, when our Haitian siblings were crossing the border from Mexico into the U.S., many folk remember what was going on there. It was really horrible the way they were being treated. They sicked horses on them in whips. They were kept them under a bridge. Interesting thing is, I went down to Del Rio, Texas, along with a group of other religious leaders to go see about these folk. I was there with a group of Haitian pastors from Florida, folk from Faith in Action. Our colleague, Reverend Mike McBride was there as well. Interesting things happened when we got there. Found out that the team that leads the immigration, the ICE team and the Border Patrol team down there, is mostly Latinx. These are brown folk that were running this. The decision to use horses and whips on those black bodies that were crossing to get to the U.S. was made by brown folk.
Wow.
And when we were down there were no black Border Patrol officers down there. The only two folk that you saw down there were brown folk and were white folk that were running back and forth. But a bunch of the Border Patrol folk had Blue Lives Matter insignia on them. We questioned the head of the Border Patrol, the special agent in charge of the Border Patrol in that area, about this, and he's like, I didn't see that any of these people had this stuff on. I'm like, you can't see the Blue Lives Matter stuff that's floating around, the face masks that they're wearing, the patches that they're wearing on their outfits. But the fact of the matter was, the decision to use these horses and whips was made by brown folk. Now, we've talked to other immigrants across the particular brown immigrants who said they have never seen horses and whips used for brown folk crossing that river.
Of course not.
And they saw horses and whips used for black folk crossing the river. So, I mean, I think we have to really, even as we're talking about how we want to build now, and, we want to find a way to build a powerful multiracial coalition, we also have to really challenge our fellow folk of color in terms of how they're hating on us and using us as foil to be able to get closer to whiteness.
Absolutely. Appreciate you so much. Thank you, man, for all the work that you do and in advancing our cause and really speaking truth to power. I watch you from afar, and I'm awed by your dedication, and appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Bishop, for everything you do. Likewise.
All right. God bless.
Blessings.
413-337-1867, right on cue. Good morning, caller. You're on the air. Caller,
good morning, Bishop.
Good morning.
Your show is kind of turning into like a weekly pity party and you're not victims. And
you're not even going to get a chance to get into your second sentence. Okay? Because the biggest pity party that's being had in America now are by white men. Okay? White men are having the biggest pity party about getting their country back. and about the immigrants and the blacks and the critical race theory. Y'all running around the country crying about critical race theory that ain't even being taught in school and all kinds of other. The biggest pity party in America right now is the white male pity party. So you ain't even gonna get on my airwaves with your foolery. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Bishop. Thank you all, Bishop. And I just wanted to know, as it relates, when we talk about a particular people, like you're saying, and I've been listening to the conversation as far as attacking other people to the cause and so on and so forth, regardless of who I am and why I'm calling. Well, I know why I'm calling, but how does it relate? I want to specifically use the share of Bishop in the scriptures. I don't know if, per se, people are Christian or Jews or Hindu or whatever. This in scriptures, what does it say about particular people? You could say our people, and why these forces and why we're never able to quite gain traction, like I'm hearing the conversations I'm saying. Is there something about related to scripture, something to actually get to the root of the issue, saying something about specifically about our people? Because it looks almost like you have a certain people or some people that's fighting against any type of uplifting of our people that was.
Well, the unfortunate reality is this, and I wish I had time to go into it, but I only got 4 minutes left in this side of the program. But as far as scripture is concerned, scripture was perverted and bastardized to justify the oppression of black people. They took texts like Noah being upset with his son Ham and saying, "Curse be Canaan," and saying, well, there's a curse on Ham, and black people descended from Hams, they're Hamitic people, and so God justified the oppression of black people. They have used scripture through the years to justify that. Then they took scripture and they changed the racial makeup of those in scripture. They turned Jesus into a white man with blonde hair and blue eyes. They made Moses white. They made Abraham white. They made the angels white. They made God white, because you cannot push white supremacy if deity is seen as the people that you're oppressing. I mean, there's so much I can go into when it comes to that.
I know it's a heavy, but I just feel like to get to the root of the problem, and then just start with the pilgrims or the forefathers of this particular country. Like I know that indoctrination couldn't just come about just like this. Like I believe that we got more to it, and we got to look a little further than trying to change a political system in the last 200-300 years.
You're absolutely right. Appreciate your call, brother.
Thank you, Bishop.
Yes, sir. Listen, I've got to transition from the spoken word into justice and flow at the 10 o'clock hour. So let me say, for those of you who are looking for a place to worship, check us out at the Spring of Hope Church of God in Christ. We're at 35 Alden Street in Springfield, Massachusetts, the Brick Church right there at Six Corners, 11 o'clock a.m. on Sunday morning. Matter of fact, the last caller was talking about, I touched on that a little bit in my sermon on Sunday. It was called Living My Life Like I'm Moses, and I touched on the fact that Moses' black Hebrew people were being oppressed by black Egyptian people. So us participating in our own oppression, like the caller said, is not anything that is new, and often driven by sacred texts to justify it. I can go on and on about this subject, and I think we're probably going to continue talking about it somewhat over the next hour. But for those of you who are listening on WTCC, jump on social media as we continue the conversation. And until the next time I talk to you and you talk to me, always remember God loves you, and so do I. The rest of you in the social media spaces, stick with us. We'll be right back. All right, and we continue on, transition into justice and flow. I thought I was going to have to do justice without the flow.
Never do justice without the flow.
All right.
You know there's a rhythm to justice.
Say again?
You know there's a rhythm to justice. You never do justice without the flow.
Well, I ain't gonna mess with that. I'm just gonna say,
Sound like a good justice to me.
I thought I was without the flow, but we's here.
Yeah.
All right. Good morning to everybody. Everybody out there who is still kicking it with us, and we've been having a lively conversation. I got a couple people in the Twitter space who are still trying to get in on that. Are we continuing along that vein?
Yes. I mean, listen. That was exactly where I was this morning in my spirit, and certainly with us being engaged residents in the city. Absolutely. We're talking about this election. We're talking about what happened, or the messages that their hand was shown completely. So we got to deal with this. We got to confront some issues because we got to do better. We got to do better in the city of Springfield. We love this city. We love this city, and we want to see this city rise to a level of excellence. And we know that it has all the potential in the world, but we got to face some really tough issues here in our community. So absolutely.
All right. Let me bring Tanya Jones, who was waiting, up into the Twitter space to chime in on this conversation. Tanya, you're in the house.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, sisters and brothers.
Good morning.
And I'm here in St. Louis, Missouri, and in the wake of Michael Brown, and we were like ground zero for the movement for racial equity. I don't like equality, I like saying equity. And that's what it's all based on. All that we're talking and discussing today is racial stratification. Other groups understand that we are not, so that they are. And they understand that. Here in my city, I was active politically, and I say I was active. I was active in a party politics And I had a Latino vice president of my ward organization, and I was president of a ward organization. And she was newly here, come here, a Latino, Latinx, as they like to call themselves, and involve themselves in every organization and get some traction, right? Because America would rather have diversity rather than distributive justice.
Yeah.
And we're owed some things. We're owed equity in this country. And other groups come by way of the 14th Amendment and by way of our struggle. And then once they get here, they don't align with the losing team. They align with whiteness. And that's what whiteness is all about. We have to stop talking about it's about melanin and skin color. America literally has parked the failure of capitalism and crony capitalism on the very group that's built it. The very group that built it. And that's what we have to understand. The largest group that's growing in our country and in my city, actually, and my state, is Indian, East Indian. And what's happened is they live in the wealthiest zip codes here. They are considered people of color. And we literally have them camouflaging our failures and the failure of this country to give us our due. And they are 80,000 plus the most elite of the country that still has the legacy of a caste system. Do you think these scientists and doctors and people like Kamala's mom, do you think they align with the underclass of this country? I'm asking a question.
Not at all. Not at all.
But yet they're included in that people of color term. So we've got to get out of this color politics and understand that underneath all the root of this, we can go down Martin Luther King in every city across this country, and we can see the neglect and disrespect of our justice claim. And we have to understand and get on these economics, because we see that other groups are propelled before us to deny us of our justice claim. And I want to always bring it back to that. And the call to action on that is for us not to argue about all these wage social issues, because that's easy. There's no money. There's no tangibles behind that. What we have to focus on is our economic equity. It is stark. It is so sad. Here we have what's called the Delmar divide, where literally our people, our household incomes are 21.7. 21.7 a household. And 78% of all our households are held, our births in our state of Missouri are by single Black women. And that we don't want to hear any more about a personal responsibility. This is socially engineered condition when all our men of my generation, Generation X, have been exiled and executed and mass incarcerated. And so we have to get to these economics where other groups are propelled before us economically. And the root of it, and we're arguing about race theory. I don't care. We need to argue about tangibles, about reparations. And I'm not talking about reparations to Black people. And we have to understand that racial stratification, why how many of our leaders, and I'm talking about political leaders, are first generation Americans. From Obama to Kamala to Sheila Jackson, to Susan Wright, to Eric Holder. Why hasn't there been descendants of slaves? Why? We have to start talking about those racial stratification economics, how other groups, like even Bernie Sanders, who propelled and had a revolution that still left us as a permanent underclass, that still left us with 10, 20, 30 plans thrown at the ghetto, that has literally been, now it's being leveled and making way for gentrification.
Wow.
So these are not accidental. In St. Louis right now, they literally have plans. They're leveling the concentrated poverty areas in which I grew up, and which has been we have been limited to first, and now it's being taken. And now we're moving all of the subsidized housing and socially engineering poverty into further out into our northern suburb where Ferguson is.
Tanya,
and it's being gentrified. Economics, you guys, focus on those economics, because we've been talking about skin color, we've been talking about personal responsibility, we've talked about do for selfish in my generation, where we were told we can do whatever we can, and some of us have been like me, been super Negroes, and that has not worked. We can't do small business, low wage business our way out of 250-year economic equity income.
Your points are well taken.
This is racial stratification about economics, about other groups want to eat, and they align with the winning team. They're not aligning with us. We are standing alone, and we need to get together on this and understand that we're zero wealth, you guys, zero wealth.
You know, there's so much truth to everything that you're saying. I wish I could let you go on, but we're going to have to get a couple more people in and continue the conversation. But yeah, you're right. We need tangibles. We've got to talk about what is owed to our people, and not all of these fluff and nutter policies and things that are thrown at us, and non-substantive things like recognizing Juneteenth and Hip Hop Recognition Month and all of that stuff, while we remain a permanent underclass that's in poverty. So I agree with everything our sister was saying.
So let's tie that in and make it relevant to what just happened here and what's happening here and how we kind of see the future. So it's a given. It's a given that
people back, just so you know.
Okay. Oh, good. Okay. I wasn't sure if that was going to be able to join us. So, but I did want to tie that in though to the election, to the local election, just happened here, and how she explained what's happening there. So it is a microcosm. I mean, like, it's happening all over the place, no doubt about it. But I do think instead of us basically trying to utilize collective power on a national level, which we see where that's gotten us, and we're even more frustrated now than we were before. But I do think that actually, if we got on the same page more locally and energize the local community to do what we did, for instance, or was doing on a national level, to get behind, certain individuals, or, whatever the case may be, to bring about change, and to develop a Black agenda, in which we know that if you do right by Black people, you do right automatically by all people. But nevertheless, and with that being said, this election showed us exactly what state and what condition the city of Springfield is in, as it pertains to race, as it pertains to economic equity, as it pertains to the educational system, as it pertains to the local government, city government, and so on and so forth. Okay, who we have? Okay, we have Zeta. Congratulations, Zeta Govan. Winning Ward A. Winning Ward A.
Can you?
Yes, we can hear you now. And we also have Ayana Crawford. Yay! Congratulations, my sister. You won. You ran an awesome race. You should be the winner. You are the winner in my heart, and so many others. You've done some tremendous work. You did a great work. And nothing against, Mr. Murphy. It's not personal, but Mr. Murphy's been on the committee for 12 years, and I see nothing that he has done in the 12 years that he's been on the school committee. And so we were so looking forward to changing that dynamic and bringing a young woman like you, passionate about children, passionate about schools, passionate about education, and certainly passionate and loves the community, bringing that energy onto the school committee, adding it to people like Denise Hurst and also LaTonya Monroe Naylor and Miss Barbara Gresham, and and just really doing some great work together on the school committee. But I know we haven't seen the last of you. How you feeling?
I'm feeling great. What I want to do, though, is I want to say that 1,253 people said they wanted change.
Yes.
And so I'm excited.
Yes.
I'm excited that 1,253 people came out and voted for Ward 2 and 8 school committee. And so I'm excited. And so we're getting ready to work. We've been working for the last 30 years. This is nothing new under the sun for me. Those of you that know me, I'm a worker. I'm a doer.
Yeah.
We do work. We do work together. And so, listen, thank you. 1,250 voters came out. That's what I'm talking about.
And they said yes to Ayana. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about too.
Let's also put some perspective on that people can better understand, is the fact that at the end of the day, the deciding margin between you and the 12-year incumbent was only 90 votes.
It wasn't even that. 74.
So, however many, 74, 90. It was less than 100 votes.
It was definitely less than 100 votes.
So,
and
that also speaks to why we need to do a better job of getting our people out. The registration is not the problem. We got plenty of registered voters. It's getting them to the polls to vote. Just think about it. 90 or 75 or whatever the margin was, more people that had went to the polls to vote for Ayana would have made the difference. And all over the country, I can pick up examples of how we could have turned the tide on important elections by simply getting people out to the polls.
Right. And so that's the work, Bishop, that we're going to do, right? And so that's the work that we have to do. And so I'm committed to doing that. And I want to work in collaboration with the NAACP, with all the organizations that are already doing that work, so that we can make sure that the next election, whomever decides to run, right, that we turn out the vote, that we turn it out, we turn it up. And so people have to understand that your power is in your vote. And I know, Bishop, you've been talking about this for years. And so we've got to be able to collaborate with you and really sort of turn that tide so that we can see a better number, because there is no reason why we did not see the numbers come out, right?
Yeah.
No reason at all. And then Mark just reminded us, and I'm hoping that he has the right number here, that 200 people didn't even vote.
Right. So
didn't even vote. 200 people didn't even vote for a ward representative on the school committee. That's ridiculous. That's crazy. That's ridiculous. So you went to vote, but you didn't vote for a ward representative for the school committee.
But you know what I found, though, in talking to some of the voters? They didn't realize that they could vote for me. They thought it was going to take away from LaTonya and Denise.
So that's
the education that we have to help them understand.
It's voter education that prevents voter inspiration.
Exactly.
You're absolutely right. So I'm so glad that you said that, because this has been a thing that's been on my heart for a number of years, trying to figure it out, like what's happening in Springfield, why, we have all of these people that are woke, that are conscious, that are involved and are engaged and won't go to vote and justify not going to vote, or whatever. And I do think that it's an education thing. And not to use the wrong word or the wrong terminology, but a lot of people are really ignorant about the process. And let's remember that a lot of that is voter suppression. A lot of that is voter suppression. Just because we live in a blue state, we think we okay. But no, there's a lot of subtleties of voter suppression that exist here in the city and exist here in the state of Massachusetts. So a lot of that misleading information, which also, misleads in education, is voter suppression tactics. So you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right about that.
Right. So, and we also saw that they had their so-called slate, right? So they brought their little team together. So if you vote for me, you vote for them, and you vote for him, right?
Yeah.
And these are people that didn't even know each other prior to
right,
running,
right?
So we know there was a systematic issue to sort of ducktail us that we're trying to get in, right? We get it. We see you, right? We see you, and
right.
So we're good, right? And
yeah.
so we're just going to continue to do what we've been doing. And not only we're going to continue to do what we've been doing, but we're now going to, like you mentioned, voter education is critical. People need to understand that the ward rep seat is also being voted on. And so not just large candidates. People have to understand that.
If it's on the docket, you can vote for it. If it's on the docket, you can vote for it. Something that happened to me, shifting just a little bit from the school committee race, but the race. When I went down to early vote, and I'm not gonna say that it was malicious, but it was a bit of misinformation that was passed to me by one of the poll workers. So I went to early vote. Young lady said to me, "You need to vote for 5 people for at large." I said, "I don't have to vote for 5 people at large." I said, "I can vote up to 5 people at large." I said, "But I don't have to vote for 5 people at large." And so, like, that was a little bit of misleading information, right? So, a lot of people thought that they had to vote for 5 people at large, just like a lot of people thought if I vote for Ayana, that's a vote against Denise, or because they don't understand the system. They don't understand how many seats are on the school committee at large, and they don't understand ward representation. They don't understand that you was representing 2 wards, 1 district, district 4, and they don't even know what ward or what district they lived in. So, but if it was on their ballot, what they needed to know was, if it's on your ballot, you can vote for it. And the same thing applies to, school committee and city council. However, we wanted Denise and LaTonya back, but that wouldn't have been a slight on you. Yeah, it wouldn't have been a slight on you. They could have very much voted for all 3 of you and been good. And that's what they should have did, but they didn't know that they could. So, I mean, it was a lot of confusion in this election. I think everybody would agree with that. Oh, you can't hear me? Zeta can't hear me. She's still having technical problems. So, but anyway, it was a lot of confusion. I know.
Right.
It was a lot of confusion, with this election. And, but I do agree with you that I think the confusion, I think the misleading information, I think that the process, sending out late applications for ballots, mail-in ballots, that's okay. And then sending the mail-in ballots really late, like close to election day. A lot of that happened. A lot of people didn't even know the difference between a ballot application and, they didn't know that they needed to fill out a ballot application to request a ballot. It was just so much. So I do think that interfered with a low voter turnout too. But at the same time, I'm still upset and disappointed in our community. I'm talking about the Black community. Black registered voters. I'm still a little upset and disappointed that more of us did not come out and vote in this election, considering how important it was. Zeta, can you hear us now?
Can you hear us?
No, she still can't hear us.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're right. You're right, Cynthia, First Lady. It was really interesting to see that we did not have the turnout, and I believe that this was lower than the previous election, which was in 2017, right? And so, and even prior to that, so we're losing traction, you know. And I know we did have a good amount of folks that voted because we had the mail-in ballot, which I think that there needs to be a permanent fixture in the legislature.
They just passed it. They just passed it.
Right. So we can have mail-in ballots, right? That just should be automatic.
Yeah.
You know?
But it needs to be earlier in the process, and it needs to be explained properly in the
exactly.
But
and
they
that's where that
just passed that.
Comes in.
Yeah, they did just pass that, and I'm sure that maybe on Bishop's next show with Senator Lesser, maybe they can talk more detail about that. But
yeah,
I did hear that they just passed that, or I did read somewhere that they just passed that. But nevertheless, I still feel very, very, very good about the race that the 8 candidates, the 8 Black candidates. I'm not going to be unashamed to say Black candidates that was running for office this year, and I know that there were other Black candidates. But this 8, you know, and you included, was selected by the Divine Community. Divine Community is a new, up and coming, you know, very involved voters, residents, leaders that are engaged, and they're coming together, and we're trying to, you know, certainly create change here in a city. And one of the things that we got behind this year was the election, and we came together and we talked, and we chose the 8 of you to push and promote. So we're a little disappointed too that we didn't create more, you know, voter turnout than we did, you know, certainly than we did. However,
but I would like to really quickly just thank the Divine Community, right, for the part that they felt I was worthy, if you will, enough to be on the slate. So I want to say thank you to the Divine Community, the supporters, the organizers, all of you that certainly came out to say, you know what, these are our candidates, and these are the folks that we want to be on the slate. So I want to say thank you personally from my campaign. That we're still going to continue to work, and we would love to work with the Divine Community on other projects, other initiatives, because for the next 4 years, our goal is to sort of be involved, more present, if you will, in Ward 2 and Ward 8, and sharing more information about what is going on currently in our schools, and then what is going on legislative-wise, and then how can we impart that information on the larger community so folks can be involved. And so we certainly will be doing that work for the next 4 years, and we certainly want to thank the Divine Community.
Well, thank you for that. One of the things that's come out of the Divine Community pretty early on is the fact that we understand that this work continues far out there. You know, that we're in the long game. Like, we're playing chess. We're not playing checkers. You know, this wasn't just for the election. This just wasn't for your campaigns, but this is for the long game. This is for the long game, because we need to see change. And we need to, you know, we need to push a Black agenda. We need to, you know, not be ashamed, you know, about promoting justice, you know, certainly in the Black community, because like I said, as we know, when you do right by Black people in this country, you do right by all people. That is a fact. That is a fact. When you do right by Black people, the most marginalized, the most disenfranchised, the most oppressed group in this country, you do right by all people. So that's what we are aiming to do. So we in the long game. We are in the long game. This is a marathon, you know. So we are in the long game. This is not a sprint. We here with you continually, you know. So we still are backing you. We still are supporting you. and we still believe in you. We didn't just choose you for this election. We chose you for the long game. So we thank you for participating. We thank you for also engaging with us and you know the support being reciprocated. So thank you. Yeah. So Zeta, can you hear us now? No, she still can't hear us. I feel so bad. I love technology. You know, well, let me say this because somebody brought it up too. Somebody brought it up in the chat here. So I know Zeta can't hear me right now, but I told both of you. And by the way, I know because of all the personal stuff that was going on in my life, that I didn't get to be more hands-on in your campaign. But I do want to say this. Thank you for the opportunity to serve you. And certainly Zeta, I worked on her campaign team. I was her chair, and this is my first time serving as chair of a campaign committee. And I mean, it was a wonderful experience. I learned so much. And I just wanted to tell both of you, thank you so much for believing in me and giving me that opportunity to even learn more. Both of you really, really, really inspire me. Well, hold up. This is what I want you to know. And I think it was Miss Sophie who said it. I can't see it right now, but I think it was Miss Sophie Jeffries who said it, who is another leader of the, Black woman in the community, steadfastness, faithfulness, to the community, to, lifting up Black people, her people, trying to achieve justice. But she said she loved how we work together. And you and Zeta served as a catalyst for that. Actually it really inspired the divine community's doctrine and commitment to unify, to bring the Black community together, to bring Black leaders together, to bring us together. So I wanted you and Zeta to speak to that. I don't know if Zeta's technology is going to be fixed, but can you speak to us about, how that was and, being unified in your efforts and, running a school committee campaign as well as a city council campaign, doing it together.
Zeta's on audio. Zeta's on audio.
Oh, okay. Zeta, did you hear my question?
I did not hear the question.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties.
Yeah, I understand. And I think everybody understands. But what I was just asking Ayana, and I wanted to hear from you as well, because the community noticed. Thank God they did. The community noticed, and it certainly translated very well, in developing the dream team, slate, the unity that you and Ayana displayed during the campaign. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and how that felt? I think she's out again, Ayana. You want to talk?
Right. Well,
okay, yeah.
Sure.
Well, no, she's talking. She's talking.
We didn't hear nothing.
Yes. Go right ahead, okay. Zeta.
You hear anything? I don't hear nothing.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
We can hear her when you're on. Babe, we need you to come back and stay on because I think we can hear her then, but we can't hear her when you're gone.
Go ahead, Zeta.
Okay, so I apologize for this crazy technology. First of all, and I just said thank you for having this forum for the community. And regarding the unity that Ayana and I and the Dream Team displayed this past election season, I think it was amazing. I felt really good going out there campaigning, for Ayana specifically because she's in my ward. And I was trying to help her as much as I could, and I think she did a great job. Like she said earlier, I heard about the people that came out to vote. Sadly, I have a really actually sick feeling about the mail-in ballot fiasco that happened. Mail-in cards were sent to residents, I think, a little bit late. They were not able to return them on time, and when they did return them, the ballots came back late. A lot of people were complaining about that, and I believe that might have had, something to do with the low voter turnout rate because we were out there. I know I talked to at least 5,000 residents, and over 1,500 of them said that they were going to vote for me. But sadly, only less than half of me and my aunt came out to vote. So the voter turnout rate in our community is evidence of the lack of unity that we have amongst ourselves. I think that if we continue to walk in unity with each other, regardless, of what we're doing and how we feel, we need to make sure that we stay together. I heard the caller earlier talking to Bishop about, the different ethnicities that come to the country and do different things. Again, this country was basically based on divide and conquer. The theory is divide us, right? The resident, regardless of what color, what nationality, what ethnicity come from, the key is to divide us so that we don't work together. And I want us to challenge us, to continue to work together, to make a more concerted effort of working together to do, what Ayana and I did. We were successful, I believe, in getting the word out, showing people how it can be done, and doing it ourselves.
Wonderful. You're absolutely right. And like I said to Ayana, we want to hear from you concerning that question as well. But like I said to Ayana, it really served as an inspiration for the divine community when we came up with the desire to develop the first ever African American slate here in the city of Springfield. Bishop, after Ayana has concluded, we need to shift to you because we need to talk about the ward representation, the reflection of what this means 12 years later concerning the fight for ward representation here in the city of Springfield. But go ahead, Ayana, talk about that unity that you and Zeta shared that served as such an inspiration during this election. I don't know. She might be having technical difficulties now.
Mm-hmm.
Are you there? Ayana, can you hear me? Okay, well, Bishop, when we get her back, we can continue that conversation about unity. But listen, we know that there would be no opportunity for two women of color running for elected office to even display unity and running in a campaign had it not been for ward representation. So talk to us about ward representation and what you saw reflected in this past election for in the fight of ward representation here in the city of Springfield.
Well, at the time we first began pushing for ward representation, and it's now a part of history. Even though we lived it, it was literally 25 years ago, quarter of a century ago. Wow, it doesn't seem that long ago, but it was in 1996 that Joe Fountain first filed a lawsuit. He had studied the Jingles test and a number of other things around how votes of black people and other communities of color can be diluted by by all at-large elections in a predominantly white city where the median voting age is higher in white communities, and it can basically put them in a position where they can never have representation in city government.
Right.
Now, Joe happened to be a white man who was unaffected by the dilution of black votes, and
Mm-hmm.
so we had to refile the lawsuit, including persons who were part of the aggrieved party, the
Mm-hmm.
people who were actually affected by it. So
Mm-hmm.
when I became um, the lead plaintiff on the lawsuit, and we pulled in some other individuals um, and organization um, 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 plaintiffs in that lawsuit, we got the assistance of attorney Fred Brewington, who is now one of the leading civil rights lawyers in New York City. Of course, my friend who I just spoke to the other day, and we were reminiscent about some of these things, James Morton, who is now the president and CEO of the YMCA in Boston, but he was actively practicing law at that time, and he had kind of both advocated on the ground floor with us, and then also was part of the legal team in terms of seeking redress through that process. We went through so many games and shenanigans were played by the city council at that time. They wanted to negotiate with us. They wanted to. We were looking for 8 ward seats, 3 at large. They said, "Well, what about 8 and 5? What about 5 and 4?" And there were many who didn't want anything at all, who were adamantly against ward representation altogether. And so we got to a point where we um, decided to go the route of a citizens initiative petition. And the deal that we cut with the city council at that time was, if the citizens initiative petition, if the majority of the citizens um, say they want board representation, will you send home rule legislation to Boston to approve a ward system? And they said that they would. Now, the reason we cut that deal with them was because we knew that we could not really win a citizens initiative petition because the threshold was so high.
Yeah.
Now the citizens
Explain
initiative,
the threshold.
the
Explain.
citizens initiative petition basically said that you had to get a certain percentage of registered voters to vote yes in order to pass. The problem with that is we couldn't get that percentage of voters to vote.
To vote. Thank you.
Let alone to vote yes. So we could never reach that threshold. But out of those who did vote, nearly 60%, 58% of them said, yes, we want ward representation.
Mm-hmm.
So the city council, we got them on record at Rebecca Johnson at a forum to commit to support it if the majority of the citizens said yes. Majority of citizens said yes. Um, we dropped our lawsuit with the anticipation that they would be true to their word, send home rule legislation to enact ward representation. They said, "Psych, we ain't gonna do it because you actually didn't win the citizens initiative petition because you didn't get enough people to vote yes." So they pulled the okey doke on us, um, which forced us into filing a second lawsuit against the city. And when we filed the second lawsuit, it was going through the discovery process, it became apparent that we were going to win the lawsuit. Now, what made the city nervous, because we had changed our lawsuit. Before, we were asking for 8 ward seats, 3 at large. This time, just asking for 8 ward seats. And although we didn't think the court would enact that, we knew that we would win the lawsuit and they would enact some form of of representative government, the city was nervous about what the court would enact.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, wait a minute, they could actually enact just 8 ward seats, or they could do the 8 and 3 or whatever, and then we're up the creek. So then the city decided, okay, we'll do the 8 and 5. We'll send home rule legislation to do the 8 and 5. So basically, they were forced into doing the right thing because they were about to lose this lawsuit. And so they sent the home rule legislation, got approved, and so 2009 was the first time we elected ward councilors. Now, by that time, now you do the math. We started this in '95. By the time it was enacted, it was 2000. By the time we had the first election that included ward representation, it was 2009. It was 14 years later. A decade and a half had passed. Demographics had begun to shift. We were always anticipating we'd get a black person in Ward 4. We'd get a Latino in Ward 1. We'd likely get a black person in Ward 3. We could potentially get a couple of black people maybe as at large. So at that time we were thinking 4 to maybe 5 people of color on the city council. But the demographics out here in Indian Orchard and other places were shifting and changing. And so all of a sudden, fast forward, as time goes on, and Orlando Ramos wins a seat in Ward 8, which was not counted among those wards that we thought we'd have a person of color in. And then we wind up with Victor Davila in Ward 6, which we knew that ward would stay white in terms of representation. So all of a sudden now you've got the ones we knew we'd have people in terms of Ward 4, Ward 3, Ward 1, but now we're looking at Ward 6 and Ward 8. Now Zaida is the councilor elected Ward 8. So we've got all of that representation now in the ward seats, and then we've got 2 black people who won out of the 5 at-large seats, and so we've got a historic time in our city where we're seeing the overall majority of people that are serving are non-white folks, and even on the school committee,
that's flipping too.
4 out of the 6 elected, because the mayor is ex officio, 4 out of the 6 elected people on the school committee are black or Latino. And so this is unprecedented in our city. So ward representation and the district representation that came along with that on the school committee has changed the face of city government.
Absolutely.
City altogether.
Absolutely. Well, okay, so we get that. So compare and contrast. What's the benefits? What's good about it? And are there any issues? Because one of the things that definitely came out this election was the flagrant, racial component that was certainly injected in this election, like never before, never before. Not in the city of Springfield. In the city of Springfield, that is.
Let me say this. This is. Our thought the whole time was, if we could get, like we have, majority of people that are black, Latino, non-white, that they would form a coalition to where we would have a solid voting bloc to advance causes that are in the best interest of our people. Now, you would think that potentially we could have that. I mean, when you look at the makeup, you look at we've got now Zaida, Govan, we've got Maria Perez, who I don't have any confidence in, but I'm just saying, just for the numbers of black and brown people, we got Maria Perez, we got
I don't think she considers herself brown though.
Melvin Edwards, we've got Marlo Brown, We've got Tracy Whitfield. We've got Justin Hurst. So the majority of the people on the 13-person council are black or brown people. And if they voted in a block, they could control, everything
have the power. Yes,
that comes before the city council. 4 out of the 7 people on the school committee. They can control. They can potentially control what happens on the school committee. Our problem has always been those persons who want to maintain their proximity to this and to stay in the good graces of the white supremacist power structure, that they vote against the best interests of their community.
Right.
So when you have a Marita Perez or others who will vote against the best interest and vote in concert with white supremacy, it undermines the efforts that we have put forth. And one of the most glaring things that I have to say when it comes to city council, when you have a Tracy Whitfield and a Justin Hurst who have been publicly, vociferously fighting against and calling out unequivocally racism, white supremacy, and anti-black bigotry in our city, challenging the powers that be, the police brutality that runs rampant in our city, and other issues of non-equity in our city, and then to the point where you think it may hurt them in their reelection, and then they still get back on. Justin Hurst topping the ticket, they still get back on. You have to ask the question: if these at-large counselors who needed white votes to get reelected are speaking out, what the hell is wrong with those who represent wards of predominantly black people who are acting like they're scared to speak out on behalf of the people that they represent?
Right. Is Zeta still on the line? Because I would love to hear her perspective on that. Can she hear?
Yes, she can hear.
Okay. Zeta, I would love to hear your perspective on that. You know, as a Afro-Latino, I think you identify as Afro-Latino, a woman. I would love to hear your perspective on that.
So, my perspective, I totally agree with Bishop. Unfortunately, like I said earlier, in this country, the history that we have, right? It's a benefit to, like Bishop said, align yourself with white people. There's white privilege that a lot of people think that they might get by osmosis, by being next to someone, and internalized racial oppression, right? Right in my island of Puerto Rico, colorism. So, the lighter you are, maybe the more benefits you might have. I have people in my family, black, when you see the think they're a black person, they're African American, they're from Africa. Okay, because we did know that the islands, when the people were stolen from Africa and brought to the Americas, they didn't land here, what we know now as America. They landed in Puerto Rico, they landed in Cuba, they landed in the Dominican Republic, the Bahamas. That's where they all landed, and that's where we all migrated onto the mainland, as we call it, And even not to say that, as the bishop said, on the city, on the school committee, in our community, we have. That's why I keep calling for unity amongst ourselves. We have to unify. We have to know our history so that we don't have to keep repeating it over and over and over again. We have to for each other. We have to for ourselves, and do what we have to do in the city. I'm not going to talk about the country because we can't control what happens in Washington, but here in the city of Springfield, we can. And like Bishop said, I can't even imagine what would happen if all the people of color in the city of Springfield voted in a block, like Bishop said. We would benefits that we need, that we deserve, because we're the ones doing the work.
We're the ones doing the work. Thank you so much for that, Zeta. I couldn't have said it better. That's why I needed your perspective on it, and especially with you being an Afro-Latino. I love the way you move, by the way. I absolutely not only love the way you move, you know this, I've said this to you, I completely admire the way you move. A conversation me and my husband was having the other day, we was talking about this anti-blackness thing that goes on in other communities and so on and so forth. But we also could name like many people from other communities that sometimes make me question myself. Am I black enough? Am I being black enough? I mean, it's been numerous white people that we befriended that are about justice, about justice for black folks, about speaking out against racism, about speaking out against, oppression and all of these systemic issues that, we have to deal with as a marginalized group in this country. And we know plenty of Latinos, we know plenty of Asians, we know plenty of people from other races and cultures, but we also have to deal with the fact that, and even within our own group, just like you just stated, within the Latino community, or whatever, that it's this internalized thing, and they do think the closer to whiteness that they are, that they can benefit from that. I had a friend that I used to work with. We don't work together anymore, but we have been friends for like 5 years. She identified as Latino, had a heavy accent, was from Puerto Rico, and so on and so forth. Married a Puerto Rican man, had Puerto Rican children, and the whole nine. Ran into a situation at school with her daughter, and she was considered, she was called a child of color, and the mother got mad and said, "We're white." And that was like that was like my opening to, I had no idea that that Latinos would be offended by being called people of color, or referred to as people of color. She was like, "No, we are white," and because of her light skin, and so she got really offended being called a person of color or referred to as a person of color. So that was kind of my eye opener. Listen, my husband, Zeta, Ayana, thank you so much for joining the show today. I think we're going to be talking about this for time to come. Zeta is going to be a regular visitor to the show, in months coming up. Zeta's, we're also planning to do some other things and, keep the community and Zeta connected, with her work, and same thing with all the other members of the dream team that ran for office this year. But nevertheless, keep that in mind. Listen, Bishop, I want you to, if you can, put that announcement in the chat that I sent you. It's a very important announcement that's coming from school committee members, and I need to make it. But I also want to tell everybody that's listening, if you live here in Springfield, you can also go to my Facebook profile, Cynthia Davis Swan in Springfield, Mass. Okay, Cynthia Davis Swan. Visit my Facebook profile or look it up. I'm gonna put the announcement and the registration on my Facebook profile as well. So this is something that's very important. Listen, this is a very important announcement. So let me read it. Okay. Model School Resource Officer MOU Review Commission to hold forums. The Model School Resource Officer Memorandum of Understanding, SRO MOU Review Commission is holding 3 virtual public input forums on the draft SRO MOU. Register online for any session. The first one is today at 7 o'clock, November 8th, 5 p.m. on Tuesday, and November 9th, and 9 a.m. on Wednesday, November 10th. Only a first name or initial or an email address is required to register. Information about the commission and MOU can be found on the commission's webpage. Parents, guardians, students, community members, district, school administrators, school staff, and others interested are welcome and can also submit feedback and comments online. Listen, this is very, 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 very important. It's very important. So if you have time tonight or any of those dates to register and to listen and to chime in on this, it would be really important for you to engage and to keep your ear to the ground on what's going on in our school district. This is a really big deal because they are trying to create a statewide framework rather than leave it to districts. It's part of a police reform. So please share. Please share. So not only do we want you to register, we want you to share this with other people, get them registered, get them involved so that we can check out what's going on. And if we don't feel like it's right, we can stop it from happening. Okay? We can stop it from happening, but we got to do this together. We got to start to collectively unify like Zeta and Yana did, and like the 8 people of the Dream Team did. We got to continue to unify and to build that collective power so that stuff can stop happening to us that we don't want to happen. So that stuff can stop happening to us that we don't want to happen. And by the way, I'm going to say this, and I'm probably going to get into some trouble, but I'm going to say this. If you didn't vote, I don't want to hear no complaints right now. I don't want to hear no complaints. However, if you feel like you was misinformed or miseducated about the voting process, we definitely want to hear from you. We definitely want to hear from you because I think that that will help us to create the kind of community curriculum to help us be more educated and informed about the voting process and what the goals are, and what the agenda is in our respective community, and the community that I'm talking most about right now is the Black community. So like I said, whenever you do right by Black people, you do right by all people. So thank you, Bishop.
All right. All right. Thank you. Thank you to your guest on today. Thank you for all of the listeners for your faithful listening and sticking with us. We out of here. Got work to do, things to do, people to see, all that kind of stuff. Until next time we talk to you and you talk to us, always remember, God loves you. So do we. Check y'all out next week. Deuces.
That's for the people.
She's on Facebook, audio room. Thank you all so much for coming in here. Do me a favor, share it. We'll see you next time. Blessings.